Welcome to day 5 of Ireland. If I seem a bit bleary-eyed, it's just because I woke up from a 3-hour nap, which was much needed. Oh my gosh. Got a really early start this morning. So breakfast was at 7, and I didn't get much sleep last night, but that was my own fault. I got into my typical habit of staying up to crochet and just browse the internet, you know. So, my own fault, although I did make good progress on my test pattern that I'm working on. At 7 o'clock, we had breakfast. I went down a couple minutes later than 7, but it was a nice enough breakfast. I had a smoothie for part of it, although there were like lots of seeds towards the end of it. I found out that the Irish flapjack is different than the American flapjack. So the American flapjack is a pancake. Yeah, it's just like synonymous with pancake. But the Irish flapjack looks more like a granola bar, and it's not as crunchy as a granola bar. It's more like, it's really gooey, and it's amazing. It was like oaty and with raisins in it, and I had to go back and get seconds for that. By 8 o'clock, we were on the bus, and we were making our way to the town of Dingle. The plan for today was we were going to go on a drive. We were going to the town of Dingle in order to go out what was called Sleighheads Drive, and then drive around in a loop and then come back through the town of Dingle and then head back to the hotel from there. But there were many stops along the way. So the first stop we took was on Inch Beach. It was a gorgeous day today. Just the entire day it's been gorgeous. Inch Beach had a beautiful view. It had we couldn't really make it all the way down to the beach, although other people had, but I mean, we were just there for a photo stop. It's a bit like rocky and whatnot. There were like mountains and cliffs in the background. And then from there, we drove into the town of Dingle, and we were given an option of where we could use the bathroom, because it would be the last bathroom before we had one at Sleighheads Drive. One was like a public restroom, but we were told that the bathrooms were not the best quality at the public restroom, and the second one was a nicer bathroom, but it was inside a jewelry store, and we had to walk through the jewelry to get to it. And most of the bus went like jewelry store. So we were also told at this particular jewelry store they made jewelry based off of the Irish writing. I think it's Ogden writing. I don't remember, so I'm gonna put it into the comment right here. It's interesting, before the old, in the prehistoric times, not prehistoric, but in early historical Ireland times, they used to have this writing where it was vertically written, so you had a line down and then you worked your way up, and the way that the lines were situated depended on what the words were. And what this jewelry store had done is take that system and make jewelry commissioned on it, so you could get a pendant or other jewelry, and you can get it engraved with whatever you want in that Irish writing. Now, I did not get anything from that store, but I did get a piece of paper that had the alphabet on it, because I have a plan for something I want to do with that. I will have to wait till I get home because it needs graph paper. But I'm excited to attempt my idea with that. It was funny, after I left the jewelry store, I came out and I was just waiting, and the tour guide came out and she says to me, "Well, I've lost them, haven't I?" And I was like, yeah. She eventually shepherded us back into the bus, herded us back into the bus. And we get about 5 minutes when we realize we forgot somebody. So the bus turns around on this skinny road and goes back to the jewelry store and picks up the person we left behind. And the funny thing is, it was one of 2 people who were wearing matching t-shirts that day, and her buddy was already on the bus. So she was asking her buddy, why didn't you watch out for me? And she's like, I haven't been watching out for you like that this entire trip. We've gone on our separate ways. It was kind of hilarious. So for the rest of the day, We're all watching like, where's Sue? Has anyone seen Sue? What's even more hilarious about this is the tour guide specifically mentioned that she has lost someone at this jewelry store every time she's gone there. So of course we lost someone there today. It's like, wow, like she knows this, like the tour guide knows these stops. Like she already knows we have a few magpies in our group. Yeah, we get distracted by shiny things. From there we went on to Sleighheads Drive, which honestly with the way it's pronounced, it looks like it should be Sleehead or Sleehay or something like that, but it's Irish or Old English, so it's Sleighheads. Oh my gosh, it was one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. It's a little peninsula, Sleighheads Drive. It's kind of like a little inlet. So we're keeping close to the edge of the coast, and on our left side was a drop down into the Atlantic Ocean. Like we actually saw the Atlantic Ocean today. On the other side we're like vertical mountains. They're going really steep. And I've been sitting next to someone who loves looking at stone formations. She also loves pointing out the different wildflowers and whatnot. So it's interesting because it's giving me a different perspective about like these flowers and rocks that I wouldn't know to look for. So a lot of these rocks she ended up mentioning have, like they're going vertical, like rocks usually lie on the floor like this. They're usually horizontal in which they're built up, so when they're like going vertical like this, there was some sort of upheaval that was going on. But they've already mentioned earlier in the tour that there's not really volcanoes in Ireland. The explanation they give for glaciers from the Ice Age. But it'd be interesting to look at a map to see how close to a fault line this particular part of Ireland is, because it goes pretty high. There were plenty of sheep, and they were like closer to the road, and they were like more bunches. It was easier to get good pictures of them than it has been for most of this trip. But also they've been putting dye on the sheeps because like a lot of farmers, they just let their sheeps roam. Like we saw this in Connemara, where they let the sheeps roam the countryside, but they put different colors dye on the sheep so that way the farmer's sheep can mingle. But when it comes time for shearing season, they can separate which sheep belongs to which farmer. And there were dye markings on the sheep there today, but I'm like in Connemara, the sheep were just touched with like blue and red dye. And down here, while there's been blue and red dye, they've also been covered with purple and green dye as well. So we were seeing some purple there. There was a sign on the road said hold a baby lamb, and we stopped there. And it's like, wait, I'm gonna get to hold a lamb today? Yes, please. We just had to pay €4, which worth it. There was like a little building, like a little stone building that had like a pen inside of it, and we had to wait for him to take care of that. But then there were also other sheep outside. Like we could see sheep being herded right before we came up by like a sheepdog, and it's like, oh, and we saw how effectively the sheepdog did it. It was like amazing. It's like inside the wooden, like inside the stone structure were the baby sheep, were like the little bitty lambs. So when he let us into the, like he ended up opening the pen just so we could get into the sheep. But I remember like before we knew, I was like petting one over the gate, and it was like nuzzling my arm. It was pretty cute. I got to hold a couple of the lambs, actually. I got to hold like a smaller one, and it was just calm. When it was passed off to me from another person, it didn't budge. I asked some other people to take pictures of me in it because like I know I'm gonna want a picture of that, but I don't want to reach for my phone right now. I held it for like a good 5 to 10 minutes, I want to say. It's like it just bleeded once. And then a little kid started going like, I want to hold a sheep, I want to hold a sheep. It's like, here buddy, you want to hold this one? But the little kid was like 3 feet tall, and when I tried to hand it down, when I started letting the lamb go down to the kid, the lamb like kicked out its legs. It's like, okay, it's had enough. Sorry, kid. Afterwards, like another person from the tour saw me in the pen, and she wanted a picture of me with a sheep. So it's like, you know what, I'll just pick up another sheep. It's all good. So I just picked up another sheep and in a little bit of a different way. But that one was also calm, and the way I had the head was like leaning towards me closer like a baby because I had the legs up in the air and it was kind of like nuzzling the head. It's like, oh, okay. It's like she had me look at the sheep. It's like, wow. It's kind of like, yeah, you're doing good there, sheep. Mm-hmm. Then I went out from the pen after that to pat some of the bigger woolly boys. The biggest one I think I spooked, unfortunately. I put my hand out too quickly and it like went away. But some of the other ones were like soft. With animals, it's kind of like you put your hand out, you give it a chance to like sniff your hand so they know what's touching them. Although there was a sign saying do not put your fingers in the lamb's mouth. I guess he's had a problem with that before. Like I also got a chance to pat the sheepdog, but the sheepdog was not interested. The sheepdog was there to work. It's like, what am I doing with these humans? And then we were told to wash our hands afterwards, which for me also included my arm because the sheep was nuzzling me. Fortunately, there was like a sink right out there with like soap, and it was like, okay, that works. Then after that, I crossed the road back towards the bus and was looking more out on Sleigh Hedge, and there were like more sheep and just enjoying the view. One of the ladies apparently, I didn't get a chance to hear this, but they told me like one of the ladies in the group on her bucket list was to do Tai Chi at the Cliffs of Moher. And I did see her doing Tai Chi at the Cliffs of Moher. But unfortunately, the weather was not cooperating with us yesterday. So she did Tai Chi again on this rock with an awesome view. So that way, she kind of has like, she did it at the location of the Cliffs of Moher, and she has a video of her doing Tai Chi with a really cool background. So she has it both, and it's like pretty amazing. After that, we went back on the bus and we drove more along the loop, and we ended up getting out at, I want to say at like a very scenic spot. So we were told to be careful of our footing because we were still in bogland and the land was not compacted down. So we had to be careful with our step, which was good advice because when I ended up, like when I stuck to developed paths going down, I was fine. But when I decided to go off the beaten path into more of the brush area, there were a couple times my foot sunk down and it's like, oh, that was a surprise. But even though my foot go down, it's like, well, was it going to become wet? And no, it never became wet. So that was like a relief, but it was amazing. Like we had view into like a lagoon. Like somewhere along this point, we saw like a formation of islands that looked like a man sleeping just by the silhouette. But there was like a lagoon type of area. It looks like it was man-made, but it was naturally made. And there were caves along the side that were there. And there were mountains in the background. And like when I saw that lagoon, I went like Gilligan's Island. But it was absolutely gorgeous. I was like one of the first to go down like the path to get closer and get a better view, and then other people from the tour ended up following me down that path eventually. And I was just like walking around a little bit, just enjoying the beautiful air, and it was amazing. After that, we went back on the bus. The lady who was left behind at the jewelry store, like we were asking like, hey, where is she? Where is she? Like she's never going to live that down, but it's like she's not going to get left behind this time. She is right next to the tour guide. She's going to make sure we get on the bus. We're not leaving without the tour guide. From there we finished like the loop and we ended up back in the town of Dingle, and we were given 2 hours in the town of Dingle to like eat and explore. I got together with a couple of the ladies from the tour to eat lunch with, and one of the ladies I paired up with, she's like, I don't eat seafood. I hope that's okay. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, typically, I don't eat seafood, so it's fine. Practically every restaurant was a seafood restaurant, which makes sense. There's a lot of fishing there. But we found a store that had non-seafood options, and we ended up eating there. It was like one of those places you order, and you just bring the bucket with your number to the table and they bring it out to you, it's kind of like a mix between a sit-down restaurant and like takeout. I tried to order an ice cream shake because I saw they had it on the menu, but unfortunately their ice cream shake was broken. A lady came out, like another waitress came out after I'd already paid, and she was like, "I'm sorry, we don't have the shake. We can substitute another drink." So I looked at the menu, I asked for a Snapple, they didn't have that either. So I was like, "Oh, I'll just take a Fanta." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll bring you 2 of them." And it's like, that works. She ended up bringing me 2 cans. I only had one of them there. I still have the other can with me. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to drink it, but I guess I'm going to have a Fanta at some point before I get on the plane to Dublin. Oh, the plane from Dublin to whatnot. But I ended up having fish and chips. I don't typically eat fish because I had fish as a little kid, and unfortunately most of the time I see them as pets, not food. But I figured a seaside town would be the best opportunity to have like fresh fish. So I had fish and chips. I don't know what type of fish it was. I know there's like an option of 4 different types of fish. And they brought out tartar sauce. They also had ketchup in packets on the table, which I didn't recognize as ketchup originally because the packets weren't red. But then I looked at them and they said tomato. And it's like, oh, this is ketchup. It was a bit of a more watery consistency of the ketchup than I was used to. I ended up having to go through 4 packets to get through all the ketchup that I needed. But because not much came out, but it was good enough ketchup. It did the job. It left my fingers very greasy. We were making our plans and I ended up having to use the bathroom in order to wash my hands, in order to use my phone, because my phone was not recognizing my thumbprint, but wasn't even recognizing that I was pressing it down. On the way into this town, I saw a sign for a store that said Kerry Woolen Mills, which is the name I've been seeing on the yarn that I've been buying. I was also told by one of the other people that I was with that there was another yarn store nearby that someone else told us, well, a store that we were promised that might have had yarn. So we ended up walking there. I kind of assumed like my old tour guide habits of like leading, like I had the map and the rest of them were trekking along behind me. Like we first went into the store that was nearby, the first woolen shop, and the first woolen shop didn't have any yarn, so we didn't spend much time there. So then we trekked to the second one, and it was a bit of a walk. Like for me, I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but for a couple other people that I was walking with, it was a bit of a walk. And we found yarn there. After that, it was pretty hot. We stopped by a place to get ice cream. They had some unusual flavors. Like one of the people who was with me ended up getting a milkshake with like the Irish cream liqueur flavor. So she said it tasted like a Bailey's. I got a 2-scoop ice cream. And like they had a chocolate dipped cone advertised, and I tried asking for that. And they said, oh, we don't have that. And it's like, okay, regular cone's fine. It's like, just asking what's on the menu. But I had a Nutella flavored ice cream. And I had this flavor called Maximilia's. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it tasted like a vanilla strawberry mix. So I guess I had a Neapolitan. There were other flavors. Like I was intrigued by the honeycomb flavor, but when I actually saw the honeycomb ice cream, it didn't look as appealing to me because they were like chunks of honeycomb. And even though I did like the chunks of honeycomb earlier in this, I'm not the biggest fan of textures in my ice cream, even though I do like mint chocolate chip, but there are times I want ice cream, I want only the texture of the ice cream. And then we found a spot to sit to have our ice cream, just like a little like triangle wooden structure. And one of the other ladies I went also had an ice cream cone, and another one did ask for samples, but they didn't have samples, so she got like a cookies and cream shake. And then they all finished theirs before I finished mine, so I just told them to go ahead, just don't wait for me to finish my ice cream, because they were thinking about walking around a little bit more. So I finished my ice cream, and I realized it was kind of spilling through the bottom. There was a hole in the bottom. It's like, oh, okay. So I ended up like sucking some of it out of the bottom of the cone before I went on. And after that, I went back to Kerry, which we did pass it back on the way, but some of the people I was walking with weren't able to walk as far as I did. So like I knew it would just be lickety split for me. So I went back to that store, and they had some yarn there. And I was able to ask some information about the store, and it was pretty nice. And then from there, I was like, I really need to use the bathroom. So I ended up, like I saw a sign for a public restroom, but I ended up walking in the wrong direction. I think the arrow was in the wrong way, if I was reading it correctly. I'm not sure if I read it correctly, though. I was a little bit dehydrated by that point. I ended up pulling out Google Maps again, and I found a public restroom, which fortunately didn't cost anything. And as I was washing my hands, I spontaneously got into a conversation from a girl from Vancouver. Which at first, when she was talking, I thought she was from England because there was that English accent going on. But I guess in Vancouver they have a very similar accent. And then from there, I went to the bus, showing off my yarn because I got quite a bit actually. Which I'm not going to go into depth here. I'm making a yarn video, as I'm sure I've mentioned in other vlogs of this. And then from there, we went back on the bus to head back out of Dingle, back into Killarney. From there, the bus actually took a detour and dropped some people off in the Killarney town center to make it easier instead of having to walk all the way down to Killarney town center. Just for those who knew they wanted to stop at the town center, they just dropped them off right then and there, which was a very nice gesture on their part. Most of the tour stayed on the bus. I stayed on the bus because I was feeling tired. I knew I was going to take it chill this evening because we did a lot of activity today. Even though it was just sitting on the bus, sometimes just sitting in a moving car is a lot, you know? Sometimes that's even more tiring than if you just get up and walk around. And I know tomorrow I got 100 steps ahead of me, which for me is no big deal. But it's I know I got a lot of walking and a long bus ride ahead of me, and I want to be alert for the scenery. So I'm kind of taking it easy tonight, and especially since I went down to Killarney for supper last night, I don't feel so bad about just sticking around the hotel and taking it easy so I don't burn out tonight. I still have half the sandwich from the Cliffs of Mohair, and I'm also developing quite a collection of plastic bottles, which the concierge told me that they will recycle whatever I bring down to the desk. So if I can get some of the recycling out of the room today down to a place where it will get recycled, that's amazing. Instead of me throwing it away and knowing that it's going to get thrown away, I have the hope that it will get recycled. But yeah, after that, I took my 3-hour nap, and I guess now we're all caught up. Yeah, what's actually been interesting about the bus ride is so something that's been happening a lot. There's our tour guide, and then there's the bus driver. But the bus driver is actually giving a lot of the information. So he's driving the bus, but there's also a microphone, and he's speaking along while he's driving, which is impressive. Because, because he's doing that, he's not reading a script. He's paying attention to the road. So he's got a lot of this committed to memory, which is amazing. I was a tour guide in one of my previous lives. In one of my previous jobs. I was just a tour guide around a football stadium. So I was not driving anyone around when I was giving the talk. So I'm thoroughly impressed by the fact he's able to give all this information while maneuvering a vehicle that is several tons. There are times he does, he is a relatively soft-spoken guy, so there are times where the other ladies are yelling at him, "You need to speak up, speak from the diaphragm." But he's taking it very good-naturedly, and he's actually mentioning some of his personal life. So we know he comes from a big family, and that he's married, and he lives somewhere near, I want to say he lives somewhere near around here, actually. But today, he's often explaining, different parts of Ireland, some of the history, and, earlier today he was talking about their school system, because we passed by a couple schools. And also something that our bus driver has been doing is he's been putting on Irish music. So he's been connecting, music that's related to, the talks that we've been talking about, and he's been playing them over the loudspeakers, so that way it kind of accents our trip, and it's been pretty nice. Yesterday he was playing some, a huge amount of the Dubliners. He's also put on some Celtic Woman. Earlier today, I ended up asking him, as if we got off the bus, what we were listening to, and we were listening to a band called the Wolf Zone, which he did warn me when I was going to look up for myself that some of the songs were largely political. So the playlist he was playing from had a lot of the political songs taken out, but he had he recommended the 25th anniversary like CD that they had, and because like this band's been playing for 50 years. Earlier today he ended up playing some Johnny Cash, because it turns out Johnny Cash wrote a song about Ireland, 40 Shades of Green. So that's actually been like a nice accent to the trip. Like I've been finding out about new music to listen to, because now with my job that I'm like turning this into my full-time job, I spend a lot of time just listening to other media while I knit. There's like the watching TV, the knits I can watch TV while making, but there's also the knits, like a lot of the time lapses where I am just listening to music, and this gives me like more options of things to explore in case I get tired of my old standbys. And I mean, it's been good music, honestly. Yeah, I'm going to be a scavenger and clean up some of the food that I've been gathering. And tomorrow we're going to leave Killarney and head into Dublin. So that's going to be the majority of our day tomorrow.
When everything kind of settles down and all that.
Watch for an opening.
Was it
Coming up? No.
story?